Go. Hey everybody, it's Pepper and Laura, and
Nice to see you.
yes, we are going to chat with you guys today. Today we're going to talk about traveling. One of our favorite places we've been that we've traveled to in person. So I know a lot of us travel in books. I know I've traveled a lot of places in books that have never been in person. Some places I don't want to ever be in person. But today, since we are doing the armchair traveler, Laura and I are going to take you to places that we've been before and tell you a little bit about it and what we enjoyed about it, and just let you hear from us. So I'm going to let Laura start because she's been to places much more than me, and let her share one of her favorite places she's traveled.
Oh, thank you. One of my favorite places. This took some thought, y'all. And if I could zero in on one outside of Appalachia, it would be the Isle of Mull in Scotland, off the coast of Scotland. It's spelled Mull, and Mull on that. But they call it Mull Magic in Scotland, and deservedly so. So, 5 years ago, I decided I needed to do some research, and it needed to be on the Isle of Mull because that was the template for A Bound Heart. And so I had not gone to Scotland alone before, and so I rang up my brother in Spain, who was in ministry there at the time, and I said, can you fly out to meet me, and you drive on the wrong side of the road, and we'll attack Mull and see what that's all about. Well, he was game for that, and so I picked him up at the airport, and we went off on this adventure, and it was really Mull magic. So we stayed in a castle, Glengorm Castle, for.
We'll share a link to that because that place is amazing.
It is. I was kind of sad because it was not as 18th century as I was hoping for. I think it actually began in the 19th century, but we'll forgive it that. It's just the most epic place with the most epic view. It's this castle, and it overlooks the sea. And there's sheep in the meadow. You can see the lambs playing and hear the sheep bleating. I mean, all those things that you just can't get if you don't set foot there. Anyway, so for research purposes, it was great. So I talked to my brother, this 300-pound, 6'3" pastor, into going on this hike of the island, and we hired a tour guide, and they packed a lunch. And so I don't remember how many miles it was, except that I was nearly prostrate at the end. But we had these big hats because it was that wind, it was in May. The daylight extended forever because you don't get a lot of dark in May, which is a great perk. But anyway, off we went out across the island. And what was so remarkable that sparked some great inspiration for A Bound Heart is that we went up to the very top where the old crofts were. I mean, we're talking 300, 400-year-old crofts that these cottagers had lived in, these stone dwellings. They are still standing in these tiny villages. And what was so poignant to me is that they would etch their names and different symbols in the stone. And I mean, this was like a voice from the past. It was very moving and very, the mist would roll in, and it was a very moody, evocative setting. So after we left the stone crofts and went down again to the sea, we braved it and basically climbed down a cliff and went into a sea cave where they had smuggled whiskey, and all these, smuggling was not allowed. There were severe fines. You could be put to death if you were caught. But a lot of the lairds, even the landowners, the nobles along the coast would help with smuggling, like my laird in A Bound Heart. And so we actually saw the bunk beds at the back of the cave. And I mean, we saw where the treasure was catched or kept, and then the tide would roll in, and they were expert seamen. They had to know to work with the tides, things like that. But it was one of the most thrilling visits of my entire life. And then after that, we would go back and I would write till like 3 a.m. And research and sleep for a couple of hours, and then get up and enjoy the very long May day again. So there you have it.
So I'm totally jealous right now. But so it's interesting that you said magical Mull and moody Mull.
Mhm.
So it's got a little bit of a.
Yeah, it does. It's even the moodiness is magic. Yeah, I was there actually when it was moody and very kind of mystical. And then I was there when the sun was shining and that ocean was just blindingly blue. And it's just hard to describe. I should post some pictures maybe in this, the comments.
Yeah, and send me as many as you want. Because
Okay.
I've been spending the last 2 weeks in Mull in all possible capabilities, watching documentaries, watching videos on YouTube, watching
Google Earth.
Yes, Google Earth, people's personal videos of their shaking camera. And
perfect.
And I've gone on Google Earth, I've gone on the road, driving all the roads of Mull around the
it's so fun, it's addicting. I was doing that till like midnight the other night, and I'm like, okay, time for bed.
Yes, so you guys are getting a little taste of what writers do and the little craziness that goes into it, because there is this touch of madness, and we embrace the madness in that. I'm so excited to get to go. I've been so excited. Did you find, like, did you get to visit any of the small villages? Because that place is packed with small villages, and when I mean small, I mean like 4 buildings in some places, and that's considered a village. Now that there are several larger ones, Tobermory being the largest on the island, but there are other ones that have more than 4 buildings.
We spent quite a bit of time at Tobermory, and my brother is a foodie like me. So one of our foodie experiences, we had Cullen skink. Look it up, Cullenskink. He swore it was the best chowder or soup he ever ate. And then I think our last night, we actually made reservations for this fabulous, it's renowned all over Britain as one of the best seafood places. And funny, I can't remember what we ate, go figure, but I do remember the view and where we sat. So that's the important thing, right? Right. And it was amazing. And Tobermory has a fabulous little museum of the history of Mull and that little tiny village, and very, very wonderful little grocer in there where you have all this bling on the shelves that is very un-American. Lots of fun biscuits. Tea. Lots of tea.
Lots of tea. Well, that's a good idea always. Lots of tea. Okay, so for me, and I'm going to be like dreaming about Mull now, because I don't think I can match that.
Oh yes, you can.
So I really don't think so. But
you had me when you clued me in on what you were going to talk about. I could just see it in my mind's eye. The picture started, the film started rolling.
All the Austinites will be like, all the Jane.
Yes.
So my first trip ever in a plane or a train or in a taxi was when I was 30 years old. I've never been anywhere. Very deep Appalachia girl. We didn't travel very often away from home. And if we did travel, it was by car, or it was extremely rare. The first trip I ever took that I have a really clear memory of was when I was, as far as away from home, was when I was about 8. And I went to the ocean with my entire family. When I mean entire family, I mean there were about 35 people going, and we rented a house on the beach, and my great grandmother had never seen the ocean, and she was like 85. And she,
a whole clan.
I know, truly was a whole clan. So we didn't travel a whole lot. So whenever I was 30, this is 5 kids later, right? Married and 5 kids later, I finally get a trip to travel somewhere. The only place I've ever wanted to go was Britain.
And you weren't too tired to enjoy it?
No, goodness. I so far so good. I travel really well, so I'm hoping that will stay true for a while. But so, and my husband was hilarious because he thought, so everything's new. So we're in the plane and I'm like shaking with excitement and everything's like big. And I'm like, did you see that? Did you feel that? Oh my goodness, what is happening? And so he was just like chuckling, going, oh, it's my life. So anyway, we stayed in Derbyshire in England, which is kind of in the middle of England. And it's known for its beautiful countryside. Now it's in between, kind of smashed in between the area of London and Devon and Cornwall, and then the Lake District. So you have Derbyshire right there in the middle. Yeah. And Derbyshire is known for its Derbyshire dales, rolling green hills, its vast countryside, and it also has cliffs. Now I knew that I was going to have an opportunity maybe to get to see some cliffs, but I didn't realize they would be so close where we were staying, so we'd actually hike them. Mm-hmm. And so when I went to, first of all, and I think you and I have talked about this quite a bit, the first time I stepped out of the plane in Matlock, England, we landed in Matlock. Okay. It was that weird deja vu feeling of, you posted an article about it recently, of feeling like I've been there before.
Yes.
And so it was very strange. And I'm looking at my husband going, I feel like I've been here before. And he's like, you're crazy. So anyway, but he just kind of chuckled and goes, oh. That's what he does anyway most of the time.
He's a good sport.
There she goes again. And we stayed in a bed and breakfast in Lee Dethick, which is in Derbyshire, not too far away from, we lived in Manchester and we stayed near Matlock. Matlock you'll read about in Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, because she stays in Matlock, in an inn in Matlock, whenever she's with her aunt and uncle touring Derbyshire. And that's whenever she gets to visit Mr. Darcy's Pemberley house. And so that's where we were. We were like 10 minutes from Matlock in a bed and breakfast.
Oh, charming.
Yes, it was very charming. And I think the thing that was so magical, kind of like you talked about, is there's this feeling of otherworldly, but it's still earth. And because right. I remember walking up to our bed and breakfast, and it's this stone 600-year-old stone farmhouse, and it has the story of the Babington plot. It was Anthony Babington's house that he built, and he was killed because he was helping Mary Queen of Scots escape from her.
Like something out of a novel, yeah. I mean, or a history book. It really becomes living history.
It's so true. And we were even able to see the hole he was digging, this tunnel he was digging to the nearby estate house underground to help her escape. So the tunnel's still there. And you're getting this opportunity going, oh my goodness, this is real. And yes. Or 400 years ago, whatever it was. And then so we stayed there, and then the first trip we took was to the cliffs. And whenever you see that scene on the 2005 Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley, you see her standing on that rock face and the wind is blowing her billowing gown behind her. I wanted that moment. I was like cooing for the moment.
With the hair.
Yes, I had my hair down just so I could feel it. And so we went and we hiked up to this place, and it was just amazing. The view, it was the same and different than Appalachia in so many ways. There were so many things that were similar as far as the rolling smooth topped hillsides, but then you have these rock cliffs that come out and it's flat down below completely. And it was amazing. I think I was
the sheer drops are pretty astounding.
That's where I was standing at one point, was on one of those sheer drops, and it was just remarkable. And I don't think I was quite prepared for some of the mountains that aren't smooth topped, are not rigid topped, they're blocks. There were several that looked like they had block tops. And it makes you wonder, was that a structure at some point in time? Because lots of times you'll hear about these people who look at those, and even now when I'm researching the Isle of Mull in Scotland, there's a lot of places that look like they have kind of a square top to them, but it's because they used to be some sort of settlement or some sort of fort or something like
fence.
Yeah. And so it made me wonder. I mean, we saw quite a few of those when we were hiking in the distance, and you're like, well, is that just the way the mountain's shaped, or is that really something? I didn't research it, but I also, you were talking about the moodiness of the weather. I think it was really surprising for me in Derbyshire in particular. We must have traveled, we were there in May as well. And the daylight was crazy, trying to get used to having like 12 hours of daylight. So like, wow, or more. I think it was just a lovely, right there in the middle of England, you had all this lovely sunshine, and we would have misty times where it would be misty but not raining. There was a lot of misting, but not a lot of real, what I would consider, oh, it's a downpour. I didn't get a lot of those. Did you get a lot of those on Mull? I mean, is it
No, the mist, and you could feel the mist, even, if you can't, you can't, if it wasn't visible like a fog, you could feel it. So those wonderful English complexions, or even Scottish ones, are constantly fed by the mist, I think. Must be a very cleansing thing, perhaps.
I'm thinking, I'm looking forward to that on our trip, that we'll get all smooth skinned.
Oh,
The facial every day from the Scottish mist. Right?
Yes.
Whatever.
Yes, I love it.
So those are two of our places we visited. If you have visited Mull, or if you have visited Derbyshire, share a little bit about where you got to travel. Laura and I will be continuing other sections of this kind of interview, talking about other places we visited, because while I was in Derbyshire, I visited some very special places I'd like to talk about. And Laura's been all over Scotland, so she's going to share Scotland. I'm jealous all the time. Anyway.
Oh, you're sweet. Not near enough. I've actually wanted to live there. My husband doesn't agree. But anyway, this is so fun to share what we remember.
Yeah. And so you guys, stay tuned. We're going to try to do this probably once a month, just share a story, maybe twice a month, but we're trying to look at our schedules to see if we can do that. But definitely once a month, where we can talk about different things related to traveling, different things maybe related to Appalachia, and kind of stuff like that. So thank you for joining us today.
Armchair travel at its finest. Bye.
Bye.